On a humid July morning in the quiet town of Ashwood, Pennsylvania, a mother walked toward her children's bedroom, expecting to wake them for breakfast. Instead, she found two empty beds. The blankets were still warm. The bedroom window was wide open. There was no sign of a struggle, no ransom note. No screams had been heard during the night. Two children had simply vanished. But before the sun had even set, police had already begun to suspect someone inside the house. Not a stranger, not a kidnapper, the children's own mother. And what followed became one of the most controversial investigations the town had ever seen. Was she hiding a terrible secret? Or did investigators overlook the real truth? This is the mystery of the Harper family. To everyone outside, the Harper family looked ordinary. 30-year-old Rachel Harper lived in a small apartment with her 6-year-old son, Noah, and 4-year-old daughter, Emily. Just a year earlier, Rachel and her husband, Daniel Harper, had separated after years of constant arguments. Their divorce had turned ugly. Every conversation became another fight. Every phone call ended with accusations. And the biggest battle of all was over the children. Daniel wanted full custody. Rachel refused. Friends later described their relationship as a ticking time bomb. Neither trusted the other anymore. Yet despite their problems, no one imagined things would soon become far worse. After moving out, Daniel didn't completely disappear from Rachel's life. Neighbors claimed they often noticed his car parked near her apartment late at night. Sometimes he'd sit there for nearly an hour before quietly driving away. Rachel even told a close friend she believed someone had been watching her. At first, she dismissed it as paranoia brought on by stress. But then, strange things started happening. A kitchen light she clearly remembered switching off would be glowing when she returned home. A drawer she'd locked appeared slightly open. The family dog occasionally barked toward the front door for no obvious reason. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing had been broken. Still, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that someone had entered the apartment while she was away. She reported none of it, without evidence. Who would believe her? The day before the children disappeared seemed almost ordinary. Rachel spent the afternoon at Riverside Park with Noah and Emily. They fed ducks, played on the swings, bought ice cream from a nearby truck. Several families later remembered seeing the three laughing together. Nothing appeared unusual. Back home, Rachel cooked dinner before helping the children with baths. Around 8:30 that evening, she tucked them into bed. Noah asked if they could visit the lake that weekend. Rachel smiled. "If the weather stays nice." Emily hugged her stuffed rabbit tightly. Rachel kissed both children goodnight, then quietly closed the bedroom door. She would later tell detectives that was the last time she ever saw them around midnight. Rachel woke briefly after hearing what sounded like metal scraping against concrete somewhere outside. She sat up, listened. Silence, thinking it was probably a neighbor taking out trash. She went back to sleep. About 2 hours later, the family dog began barking again. This time it lasted longer. Rachel walked into the hallway. Everything appeared normal. She checked the front door, still locked. She glanced toward the children's room but didn't go inside. She later admitted that decision would haunt her forever. If only she had opened that door, perhaps everything would have been different. At exactly 7:12 the next morning, Rachel carried 2 bowls of cereal toward the children's bedroom. She pushed open the door and froze. Both beds were empty. The blankets looked disturbed, as though the children had slept there. Emily's stuffed rabbit remained on her pillow, but Noah and Emily were gone. Then Rachel noticed something else. The bedroom window. It stood wide open. A cool breeze drifted through the room. She distinctly remembered locking that window before bedtime. Her heart immediately began racing. She searched every room, bathroom, closets, kitchen, hallway. Nothing. She ran outside shouting their names. Neighbors stepped onto their porches. Within minutes, someone called 911. Police arrived within 15 minutes. Detective Michael Grant, a veteran investigator with over 20 years of experience, took charge of the case. He carefully questioned Rachel. When had she last seen the children? Who knew they were home? Had anyone threatened her recently? Rachel answered every question she could. Then Daniel arrived. The children's father rushed toward the apartment, looking visibly shaken. But almost immediately, he and Rachel began arguing. Each blamed the other. The detectives watched quietly. A bitter custody dispute. A broken marriage. 2 missing children. To investigators, those details immediately raised red flags. While officers searched the apartment, they found no signs of forced entry. The front door remained locked. Nothing appeared stolen. The children's shoes were still beside their beds. Detectives couldn't understand one thing. If someone had taken the children, how had they entered? And how had they left without waking anyone? Then an officer called Detective Grant into the children's bedroom. Outside the open window, soft soil covered a narrow flower bed. There, barely visible, was what looked like a single shoe print. Too small for an adult, too large for either child. The impression wasn't complete. Rain clouds were already gathering overhead. If investigators didn't preserve it quickly, the only physical clue might disappear forever. But while officers debated what to do, another radio call came through. Something had just been discovered less than a mile away. Something that would transform a missing person investigation into something much darker. Police rushed toward the new location, fearing the worst. What they found would shock the entire town and divide investigators for decades. Was Rachel Harper a grieving mother, or was someone carefully building a case against her? Detective Michael Grant's radio crackled to life. "Unit 7, we've got something near Blackwood Creek." Every officer nearby stopped what they were doing. Just minutes earlier, they had been searching neighborhoods, knocking on doors, and interviewing anyone who might have seen Noah or Emily. Now, the urgency in the dispatcher's voice suggested this discovery was different. Grant arrived within minutes. The area had already been sealed off with yellow police tape. A small crowd stood behind the barricades, whispering to one another. An officer approached him. "Someone found a backpack." Grant frowned. It was Noah's. Inside were his favorite toy dinosaur, a half-finished coloring book, and a small flashlight Rachel had bought him only weeks earlier. But something didn't make sense. The backpack looked almost arranged. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't damaged. It had been placed where someone was almost guaranteed to find it. Grant quietly looked around. Someone wanted us here. By evening, every local news station had one question. Could Rachel Harper be hiding something? Reporters camped outside her apartment. Cameras followed every move she made. Social media exploded with theories. Some claimed she looked too calm. Others insisted she cried at the wrong moments. Detective Grant knew appearances proved nothing. People reacted to trauma differently. Still, there were questions Rachel couldn't answer. Why had she ignored the barking dog? Why hadn't she checked the children's room during the night? And why had she deleted several messages from her phone the day before the disappearance? Rachel admitted the messages existed. They were conversations with Ethan Brooks. "I didn't want Daniel reading private conversations if he somehow got my phone." It sounded reasonable, but reasonable wasn't the same as convincing. While reviewing Daniel's phone records, investigators noticed something unusual. His phone had connected to a cell tower less than 2 miles from Rachel's apartment, shortly after 1:40 a.m. That wasn't where Daniel said he had been. When confronted, he sighed. "I wasn't spying on Rachel." "So why were you there?" After several minutes of silence, Daniel finally admitted the truth. He had hired a private investigator. For weeks, he believed Rachel's new relationship with Ethan was moving too fast. He wanted proof that Ethan wasn't a safe influence around the children. The investigator had been following Rachel for days. But on the night the children disappeared, The investigator claimed he had gone home early. Grant wasn't convinced. If someone had been watching the apartment, they might have seen exactly what happened, or they might have been involved. Ethan Brooks arrived at the police station the following morning. He was calm, cooperative, confident. His hotel records confirmed he had checked into a business conference nearly 3 hours away. Security cameras showed him entering the lobby. At first glance, his alibi appeared airtight. Then Detective Grant placed a printed phone log on the table. "You spoke with Rachel at 11:18 p.m. Ethan nodded slowly. "I did." "But yesterday you said you hadn't." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "I lied because I knew exactly what people would think." Rachel had called him in tears. She believed someone had been outside her apartment. She wanted him to drive over. He told her she was probably imagining things. "I wish I hadn't." Grant studied him carefully. "What made her so frightened?" Ethan answered with one sentence. "She said she saw someone standing beneath the children's bedroom window." The room fell silent. 3 days later, an elderly mail carrier walked into the police station. He had delivered mail in Ashwood for almost 30 years. "I remembered something." The detective listened carefully. Around 2 o'clock that morning, he had driven past Rachel's apartment while beginning his route. He noticed a dark SUV parked across the street. Its headlights were off. The engine was running. Someone sat inside. He couldn't see the driver's face. He assumed it belonged to a resident. Only after hearing about the missing children did he realize the timing. Police searched traffic cameras across the county. One camera captured a blurry image. The SUV existed, but the license plate couldn't be read. Another lead, another dead end. As detectives organized evidence, Officer Lisa Morales noticed something strange. One interview transcript was gone, completely missing. It belonged to the private investigator Daniel had hired. No digital copy, no paper copy, nothing. Grant searched every evidence box himself. The interview had vanished. Only 3 people had access to that room: Grant, Morales, and one senior detective who had recently taken unexpected leave. Had someone misplaced the file or intentionally removed it? For the first time, Grant began questioning whether someone inside the investigation wanted certain details to disappear. Forensic technicians finally completed a detailed examination of the bedroom window. Everyone expected Rachel's fingerprints, Daniel's, perhaps Ethan's. Instead, they found a partial fingerprint belonging to none of them. The print didn't match anyone in the local database. Whoever had touched that window had never been considered a suspect. Grant pinned the fingerprint report to the investigation board. Every theory he'd built over the past week suddenly began to crumble. Maybe the case had never been about Rachel. Maybe it wasn't about Daniel either. Maybe everyone had been looking in the wrong direction from the very beginning. Late that night, as Detective Grant prepared to leave the station, his office phone rang. No caller ID, he answered. Silence. Then a distorted voice whispered just 6 words. "You're chasing the wrong family, Detective." The line went dead. Police traced the call. It had been placed from a public payphone nearly 50 miles away. By the time officers arrived, the caller was gone. Grant stared at the investigation board. Rachel, Daniel, Ethan, the unknown fingerprint, the abandoned backpack, the dark SUV. None of it fit together. Not yet. But one thing had become painfully clear. Someone was watching the investigation unfold and staying one step ahead. As rain began falling outside the station, Grant looked at the family photo taken from Rachel's apartment. He quietly said to himself, "This isn't over. Not even close." Detective Michael Grant stood silently before the investigation board, staring at photographs that no longer seemed to fit together. The fingerprint remained unidentified. The mysterious SUV was never traced. Noah's backpack had revealed nothing except another unanswered question. After months of relentless investigation, every promising lead eventually disappeared into silence. Rachel Harper was never charged, yet suspicion followed her everywhere she went. Daniel insisted he wanted justice, but many wondered whether he had revealed everything he knew. Ethan Brooks quietly left Ashwood, refusing every interview ever requested. Years passed, detectives retired, and new investigators reopened the files, hoping modern technology would uncover what had been missed. It never did. The Harper case slowly became one of the town's greatest unsolved mysteries. Some believed Rachel was an innocent mother destroyed by public judgment. Others remained convinced someone close to the family had escaped justice. Detective Grant wrote one final sentence before closing the file forever. The truth was always here. We simply failed to recognize it. Even today, no one knows who stood beneath that bedroom window on the night Noah and Emily vanished. Maybe the answer still exists. Maybe someone has carried it all these years. Only silence knows.